I was going to talk to you about the core characteristics of a champion, and I'm going to do that. But first, I want you to do something for me. I want you to agree to put yourself and your family on what I call project status. Project status. Now, let me tell you what I mean when I say to put yourself and your family on project status. Let's say you're sitting around watching TV and you have an awareness that you need to clean out the garage and paint it. Okay, you're not doing anything about it, but you've got an awareness that you need to do it. What do you think the chances are of that garage getting painted? Yeah, not much. But let's say you're listing your house for sale and they are going to come and take pictures Monday morning and it's Friday at noon. Now, what are the chances that garage is going to get cleaned out and those walls are going to get painted? Pretty damn good. You know why? Because it becomes a project with a deadline. It becomes a project with a deadline, and you put it on project status. That means you push everything else out of the way. That moves to the top of the priority list. It's on project status, and things start to happen. Now, I tell you that to tell you this. If you aren't fully satisfied with who you are or where you are, if you aren't fully satisfied with your marriage, your family, your career, the amount of money you're making, the amount of money you're saving, the condition you're in, how much weight you're carrying, what kind of health you have, it's not going to change until you put it on project status. Now, let me explain something that I think is really important before we get to the core characteristics of a champion. And when we get to the core characteristics of a champion, I'm going to be telling you what I have learned across time. And you're going to be hearing some quotes from some real champions. I'm talking Charles Barkley, Emmitt Smith, Bill Belichick, Shaquille O'Neal, and not just athletes. You're going to be hearing from like Ron White, one of the most successful comedians in the world, Steve Harvey, one of the most successful television personalities in the world, Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest legacies in the history of football, Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Kobe Bryant, Derek Jeter, Billie Jean King. I'm going to be giving you some insight from some of the biggest champions in the history of our country. But I don't want to tell you that unless you're willing to put yourself on project status. Because if you're not willing to put yourself on project status and all you're going to do is just have an awareness, I'm wasting my breath and your time, and I don't want to do either one of those things. So when I say put yourself on project status, I mean you've got to say, I am going to set some goals. I'm going to put them on a timeline, and I am going to commit to change. Now, there are 4 stages of readiness that I want you to understand before we go forward. 4 stages of readiness. Now, stage 1 is when you are going to commit to a change because it has been assigned by authority. Now, what am I talking about here? Let's say you get in trouble, so you go to court and they give you court-ordered anger management or court-ordered rehab for drunk driving. What do you think the chances are that somebody's going to really make a change when they go to therapy because the court says they have to and no other reason? How about 0? Whatever money they spend on these court-ordered programs, they might as well put them in a paper shredder. Take that money, put it in a paper shredder, bag it up, and sell it for confetti. At least they would get some money out of it because it's absolutely worthless. Those people are going because they are compelled to go, and absolutely no change is going to take place. Stage of readiness number 2 is when you're making a change because somebody else wants you to. You don't really want to, but your wife or your husband or your parents, your friends, they want you to do it, so you do it just to please them. You do it just to get them off your back. You don't really believe it. You don't really want it. But hey, if it shuts them up, fine, I'll do it. Again, what's the chance of meaningful change? Slightly more than making confetti, but not much. Readiness for change, stage number 3, is when you intellectually know that you need to do it. You don't feel it, but at least in your mind, you know, hey, this is not smart. Smoking kills you. I know that. I need to stop. In my mind, I know it. I don't feel it. I want to keep smoking. I want to keep drinking. I want to keep doing whatever I'm doing. But at least in my mind, I know it's not smart. I'm not really emotionally there, but at least I'm smart enough to know that what I'm doing is not right. Now, sometimes intellect will take over and you'll white knuckle and power yourself through, so there's some chance for change. But real change happens in stage number 4. Stage number 4 is when mentally and emotionally you are ready for change. Stage 4 is when you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I will not take this from myself another minute, of another hour, of another day. I don't care how scary it is on the other side. I will face that fear instead of take this from myself for another second. I am sick to death of this. I'm going to throw up if I do this another day. I'm not taking this from myself. I am going to change. That's when you put yourself on project status. That's when you take what I'm getting ready to tell you. That's when you make the most of it. That's when you make a change. Not before. So you have some work to do if you're going to maximize what I'm getting ready to tell you. I want you to put yourself and or your family, whatever your focus is, on project status. I do not want you sitting on the couch having an awareness that you need to change. I don't want to talk to people that have an awareness that they need to change. I want to talk to people that put themselves or their families on project status. Now, if you want to have a phenomenal family, you've got to create some factors, and I'm going to list those for you on the website. Number 1, you got to have a nurturing and accepting family system. I don't care what kind of legacy you had. I don't care what kind of family you grew up in. You are the adult now. You get to decide what kind of family system you have, and you have to create a family system that nurtures every family member and makes every family member feel accepted. The number 1 need in all people is acceptance. The number 1 fear in all people is rejection. And if you don't feel acceptance in your own family, then people are writing on the slate of those family members with a real ugly pen. You need a family unit that nurtures everybody in the family, accepts everybody in the family. Everybody wants to have a sense of belonging. Everybody wants to feel like if they don't show up somewhere, there's somebody in this world that will miss them. There's somebody in this world that will care. There's somebody in this world that will be checking to find out why they're not where they're supposed to be. You want a family system that nurtures them, makes them feel good about who they are, and accepts them as part of the family. And there's a role for every member of the family. Factor number 2 is that the family has a rhythm versus chaos. And by rhythm, I mean there's a pattern to the family. It's predictable. That doesn't mean there's an absence of spontaneity, but there's a rhythm to it. They just know that, hey, we go to bed at a certain time, we get up at a certain time, we have meals at a certain time, we react to things. Well, there's just a certain rhythm to the family, and it's a very calming rhythm. We can depend on it, we rely on it. It's very important that children grow up in a family where there's a certain rhythm, there's a certain flow. Factor number 3, there are active communications. And let me tell you how to do that. If you're a parent, I want you to spend time talking to your children about things that do not matter. I didn't misspeak. I said, I want you to spend time talking to your children about things that do not matter. Why? Because it's great practice for when you need to talk to them about things that do matter. You ever watch these hospital shows on TV? What's the first thing they say when they roll somebody into the ER? Start an IV with Ringer's lactate. Did you ever wonder what that was? It's sugar water. It has absolutely nothing in it. There are no antibiotics. There's no pain medication. There's nothing in it. What are they doing? They're getting an open vein. So when they figure out what they do need, there's an open vein so they can easily flow into it what the patient needs. That's what happens when you open channels of communication by talking to your children about things that don't matter. It's not threatening, it's easy. And then when something comes up that does matter, you've got an open vein. You just flow right into it. It's not the first time you've ever gone out and tried to talk to one of your kids and they're thinking, what the hell is this all about? Talk to your children about things that don't matter so there's an open line of communication when things do matter. Number 4, you need to create rituals and traditions. And these are things that have to do with birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, bedtime rituals, things that your children will remember 30 and 40 years from now. Did you always open your presents on Christmas Eve? Did you go to Mass on Christmas Eve? Did you have birthday parties where there was always a candle and it was just the family? Did you have certain things you did at bedtime? Did you turn the TV off and start calming down before it was bedtime? I always told my boys a story right before they went to bed, and it was always a story about them. I told them a story, and they were in the story. And they always used to listen to figure out, how am I going to be in this story? So I'd be telling them a story, and then all of a sudden, Jay or Jordan was in the story, and they were doing something, and they always listened for that. And both of those boys grew up from the time they were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, getting told a story that they starred in every night before they went to bed. It wasn't a big deal, but it was just a tradition. It was a ritual that they grew up with. And they will tell you to this day that they heard these stories. Sometimes they were funny, sometimes they were serious, sometimes they were just matter of fact, but they were always in the story. Create little rituals and traditions for your family. And the 5th thing is you've got to have crisis management. Every member of your family knows that when a crisis arises, there's no judgment, there's no punishment, there's no problem. The crisis gets managed. That every family member becomes a resource. They know when problems arise, their primary unit is their family. And they need to know that and learn that, and you need to make that the case no matter what. If your daughter all of a sudden is pregnant at 14, she needs to know, my family will rally around me. We'll deal with it later, but right now, I know I have a place to go. If your child is getting bullied at school, they need to know, I have a place to go. I'm not going to be left twisting in the wind to deal with this on my own. I have resources in my family. I'm nurtured and I'm accepted. We have active communication, and my family is a resource for me. Now, I'm going to have all of those things on the website because if you're going to change your family, it has to be on project status. And if you'll do that, you have a place to start. You have a formula to pursue. That's what you need if you're going to put it on project status. You can't just make it up as you go along.